The village was dying. The farms no longer produced enough food. Day after day, mothers watched their children go to bed hungry. Many families could not remember the last time they had a full meal. To make things worse, children had started disappearing. Some vanished while gathering firewood. Others never returned from the river. No one knew where they had gone. Fear spread through the village like a sickness. Yet the chief showed no mercy. Even though the crops were failing, he continued to collect heavy taxes from the people. Anyone who complained was beaten, fined, or thrown into prison. Soon, the villagers became too afraid to speak. They lowered their heads and suffered in silence. Then, one hot afternoon, a stranger arrived. He was a traveler with dusty clothes and sharp eyes. As he walked through the village, he noticed the empty farms, the hungry children, and the fear on every face. He listened carefully to the whispers of the people. But there was one question nobody seemed willing to answer. Why was the chief becoming richer every year while the rest of the village became poorer? The stranger found this strange. Very strange. The village, known as Akoma, had once been a place of joy and plenty. People worked together, shared what they had, and celebrated every harvest. But those days were gone. Under Chief Kondo's rule, life had become harder with each passing year. The villagers feared him. The children avoided him. Even the elders stayed silent when he spoke. As the stranger looked around the village, he began to feel that something was deeply wrong. What nobody knew was that Chief Kondo had been hiding a terrible secret for many years. And that secret was about to change everything. Each morning, the people of Akoma woke before sunrise. The men went to the fields with their farming tools, while the women carried baskets to gather fruits, vegetables, and firewood. But no matter how hard they worked, there was never enough food. The soil seemed weaker every year. The harvest grew smaller. Many families survived on only one meal a day. Some had no meal at all. Children with thin faces sat outside their huts, hoping someone would share a piece of yam or a handful of grain. Mothers worried about their families, while fathers wondered how they would survive another season. Yet, despite all this suffering, Chief Kondo lived a very different life. His compound was large and beautiful. His storehouses were always full. His guards wore fine clothes, and rich meals were prepared for him every day. While the villagers struggled, the chief seemed to grow wealthier with each passing year. Many people noticed it. But nobody dared to speak. Everyone knew what happened to those who questioned Chief Kondo. A farmer once complained about the heavy taxes. The next day, his farmland was taken away. An elder asked why the chief needed more grain when the people were starving. A week later, he was thrown into prison. After that, fear ruled the village more than the chief himself. Whenever people gathered at the market, they spoke in low voices. They looked over their shoulders before saying anything. Even children knew better than to ask questions about the chief. But there was another fear that troubled the villagers. At the edge of Akoma stood the sacred forest. The forest had been there for generations. Tall trees blocked the sunlight, and strange sounds could often be heard from deep within its shadows. The elders always warned people to stay away from it after sunset. In recent years, strange things had started happening there. People sometimes saw lights moving between the trees at night. Others claimed they heard voices whispering their names when no one was nearby. A few brave villagers had gone into the forest to find answers. But whenever they returned, they were different. They became quiet. They avoided questions. Some refused to speak about what they had seen. Others simply stared into space as if they were remembering something terrible. The stranger listened carefully to these stories. The more he heard, the more curious he became. Everyone in Akoma seemed afraid of the sacred forest. But why? What was everyone so afraid of? A few days later, a loud drum echoed through the village. Everyone knew what it meant. Chief Kondo was calling a public meeting. Men, women, and children slowly gathered in the village square. Many looked worried. Meetings called by the chief rarely brought good news. The stranger stood quietly beneath a tree and watched. Soon, Chief Kondo stepped forward. He wore expensive robes and carried a staff decorated with gold. 4 guards stood behind him. He looked over the crowd and raised his hand. "The village owes me more taxes," he announced. "The last harvest was poor, and the chief's storehouses must be protected. Starting today, every family will pay twice as much grain as before." A wave of shock moved through the crowd. People stared at one another in disbelief. Many families could barely feed themselves. Some had already sold their goats and chickens to pay previous taxes. But no one dared to speak. The chief continued. "Those who cannot pay will give up their livestock. If that is not enough, their farmland will belong to the chief." Fear filled the square. The stranger noticed tears in the eyes of several villagers. Over the next few days, the chief's guards moved from house to house. Families lost goats, sheep, and chickens. Some lost the very land their ancestors had farmed for generations. The village grew poorer while the chief's wealth continued to grow. Then one morning, something happened that no one would forget. An elderly widow named Mama Adwa slowly walked to the chief's compound. She was thin and weak. Her clothes were old and worn. Her husband had died many years earlier, and she lived alone. The villagers watched as she knelt before Chief Kondo. "Please, my chief," she begged. "Have mercy on me. I have already given all my grain. My only goat is all I have left. If you take it, I will have nothing." The old woman's voice trembled. Many villagers lowered their heads. They felt sorry for her. But Chief Kondo showed no pity. Instead, he laughed. A cold, cruel laugh. "You are old and useless," he said loudly. "If you cannot pay, then you do not deserve to keep your goat." The crowd fell silent. Mama Adwa wiped tears from her face. "Please, my chief," she whispered. But the chief turned to his guards. "Take the goat." The guards obeyed at once. The old woman cried as her goat was dragged away. Not one person dared to help her. The stranger watched everything. His hands tightened into fists. He had traveled through many villages, but he had never seen a leader treat his own people with such cruelty. As Mama Adwa slowly walked away in tears, one question burned in his mind. Why would the chief treat his own people this way? After witnessing what happened to Mama Adwa, the stranger could not stop thinking about Chief Kondo. Something about the chief did not make sense. The village was poor. The farms were failing. The people were hungry. Yet the chief seemed richer than ever. His storehouses were full. His guards were well fed. His compound continued to grow larger every year. The stranger felt there was something hidden beneath the surface. So he began paying closer attention. Each day, he walked around the village and spoke with different people. Most were too afraid to say much. They would answer a few questions and then quickly change the subject whenever the chief was mentioned. One evening, while sitting beside a small cooking fire, the stranger overheard 2 elderly men whispering. Their voices were low and nervous. "He is going again tonight," one man said. The other quickly looked around before speaking. "Keep your voice down. You know we should not talk about it." The stranger became curious. "Who is going where?" he asked politely. The 2 men froze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then one of them leaned closer. "The chief," he whispered. "Every month, on the night of the new moon, he goes to the sacred forest." The stranger's eyes widened. "Does he take his guards with him?" Both men shook their heads. "No. Nobody goes with him. Not even his guards." Again, they shook their heads. The chief enters the forest alone. The stranger found this strange. A powerful man like Chief Kondo never traveled anywhere without protection. Yet every month, he willingly entered the most feared place in the village by himself. Has anyone followed him? The stranger asked. The old men immediately looked frightened. One of them stood up. You ask too many questions. The other quickly added, forget what you heard. It is safer that way. Without another word, they walked away. That night, the stranger lay awake inside his small hut. He thought about the missing children. He thought about the frightened villagers. He thought about the chief's growing wealth. And most of all, he thought about the sacred forest. By morning, he had made a decision. If the answers could not be found in the village, then perhaps they could be found inside the forest. The next new moon was only 3 nights away. The stranger planned to secretly follow Chief Kondo. For the first time since arriving in Akoma, he felt that he was getting closer to the truth. But as he looked toward the dark line of trees in the distance, a chilling question entered his mind. What was hidden inside the forest? The next day, the stranger continued searching for answers. Most villagers refused to talk about the sacred forest. Some simply walked away when he mentioned it. Others looked frightened and changed the subject. As the sun began to set, the stranger noticed an old man sitting beneath a large baobab tree at the edge of the village. The man was known as Boba Kweku, the village storyteller. His hair was white, and his face was covered with wrinkles. He was one of the oldest people in Akoma and was said to know many stories from the past. The stranger approached him respectfully. Boba Kweku, he said, I wish to learn about the sacred forest. The old man's smile quickly faded. For a few moments, he remained silent. Then he slowly nodded. Sit down, he said quietly. There is something you should hear. The stranger sat beside him. The old storyteller looked toward the dark forest in the distance before beginning. Many years ago, he said, before Chief Kondo was born, Akoma was a rich and happy village. The rivers were full of fish. The farms produced plenty of food. No child ever went hungry. The stranger listened carefully. But one year, Boba Kweku continued, a terrible drought came. The crops died. The rivers dried up. People began to suffer. The old man lowered his voice. The village leader at that time became desperate. He entered the sacred forest searching for help. The stranger leaned forward. What happened then? The storyteller's eyes grew serious. Deep inside the forest, the leader met a powerful spirit. A cold wind suddenly passed through the tree branches. The spirit offered him wealth, power, and prosperity. In return, the leader had to make a promise. The stranger felt uneasy. What kind of promise? The old man sighed. A forbidden pact. The stranger's heart began to beat faster. The spirit demanded a terrible price. It wanted something from the village in exchange for its gifts. What was the price? The stranger asked. Boba Kweku shook his head. That part of the story was lost long ago. Few people know the full truth. The stranger frowned. Did the leader accept the pact? The old storyteller looked toward the chief's compound. According to the legend, he did. Silence filled the air. The stranger thought about the chief's secret trips into the forest. He thought about the missing children. He thought about the chief's growing wealth while the villagers suffered. Suddenly, the old legend no longer felt like a simple story. It felt like a warning. As darkness settled over Akoma, a troubling thought entered the stranger's mind. What if Chief Kondo knew far more about the ancient pact than he was willing to admit? And if that was true, could the chief be connected to the legend? 3 nights later, the new moon finally arrived. Darkness covered the village of Akoma. The sky was empty, and the air felt strangely cold. The stranger waited quietly near the chief's compound. He stayed hidden behind a group of bushes and watched carefully. Hours passed. Then, just before midnight, the doors of the compound slowly opened. Chief Kondo stepped outside. He wore a long black robe and carried a small wooden box under his arm. To the stranger's surprise, no guards followed him. The chief looked around to make sure nobody was watching. Then he started walking toward the sacred forest. The stranger waited until the chief was far ahead before following. The deeper they went, the darker the forest became. The trees blocked almost all the starlight. Strange sounds echoed through the shadows. Branches cracked. Leaves rustled. Once, the stranger thought he heard someone whisper his name. But when he turned around, nobody was there. Still, he continued forward. At last, the chief reached a part of the forest that few villagers had ever seen. There, hidden behind a wall of thick vines, stood an ancient shrine. The stranger's eyes widened. The shrine was made of old stone covered with strange symbols. Broken statues surrounded it. Small clay pots and animal bones lay scattered on the ground. The place felt forgotten. Yet someone had been using it. Recently. The stranger quickly hid behind a large tree and watched. Chief Kondo stepped into the center of the shrine. He opened the wooden box and removed several gold bracelets, coins, and precious stones. Then he carefully placed them on a stone altar. The stranger could hardly believe what he was seeing. The chief knelt before the altar. He lowered his head and began speaking. At first, the words were too soft to hear. Then the stranger caught a few sentences. I have done everything you asked. The villagers suspect nothing. Please continue to bless me with wealth and power. A chill ran down the stranger's spine. The chief was not praying. He was speaking to someone. Or something. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the shrine. The trees began to shake. The flames of several hidden torches burst to life all at once. Then a deep voice echoed through the darkness. The stranger froze. The voice did not sound human. It sounded ancient. Powerful. Terrifying. But before the stranger could hear another word, a dry branch snapped beneath his foot. Crack! The sound echoed through the shrine. Chief Kondo jumped to his feet. His head turned sharply toward the stranger's hiding place. For a moment, everything became silent. Then the chief shouted, "Who's there?" The stranger's heart pounded. Several dark figures suddenly emerged from the shadows around the shrine. They began moving toward him. Fast. The stranger realized he had been discovered. And now he was trapped deep inside the forbidden forest. Would the stranger escape alive? The stranger did not wait to see who was coming toward him. He turned and ran. Branches slapped against his face as he rushed through the dark forest. Behind him, he could hear shouting. Catch him! It was Chief Kondo's voice. The stranger ran as fast as he could. He jumped over fallen logs and pushed through thick bushes. At one point, he slipped on wet ground and nearly fell into a small stream. But he kept moving. Finally, after what felt like hours, he burst out of the forest and disappeared into the darkness beyond the village. By sunrise, he was safe. But so was Chief Kondo. The stranger knew what he had seen. The chief was hiding something. The strange voice. The secret shrine. The midnight ritual. None of it was normal. Yet he had no proof. And without proof, nobody would believe him. Unfortunately, Chief Kondo moved first. Later that morning, the chief called another meeting in the village square. The villagers gathered once again. The stranger stood near the back of the crowd and listened. Chief Kondo looked angry. My people, he announced, last night a dangerous criminal entered our sacred forest. Gasps spread through the crowd. The chief pointed directly at the stranger. It was him. Many villagers turned toward the stranger. "He has come to steal from our village," the chief continued. "He sneaks around at night and disrespects our traditions. He is a liar and a troublemaker." The crowd began whispering. Some villagers immediately believed the chief. After all, he had been their leader for many years. "If the chief says it, it must be true," one man said. Another nodded. "The stranger has been asking too many questions." But not everyone agreed. Mama Adwa stepped forward. "The stranger has shown more kindness than many people in this village," she said. "He listened when nobody else would." Several villagers nodded quietly. Others remembered how the stranger had comforted hungry families and shared his food with children. For the first time in years, people were disagreeing openly with the chief. The village was becoming divided. One side trusted Chief Kondo. The other side was beginning to doubt him. The chief noticed this. His eyes narrowed. "You have 3 days to leave Akoma," he told the stranger. "If you remain after that, you will be arrested." The crowd fell silent. The stranger felt the pressure growing around him. 3 days. That was all he had. If he failed to uncover the truth, the chief would remain in power. The villagers would continue to suffer. And whatever was happening inside the sacred forest would continue in secret. As the meeting ended, the stranger looked toward the dark trees in the distance. He knew the chief was hiding something terrible. But knowing the truth and proving it were two different things. Now he had only 3 days to find evidence before it was too late. Can the truth be revealed before another tragedy occurs? The stranger spent the next 2 days searching for evidence. He knew that stories and suspicions would not be enough. The villagers needed proof. On the second evening, help came from an unexpected person. A young hunter named Kojo quietly approached him. "I saw what happened at the meeting," Kojo said. "I do not trust the chief anymore." The stranger listened carefully. Kojo looked around to make sure nobody was watching. "My father was one of the men who entered the sacred forest years ago," he said. "After he came back, he stopped talking about it. Before he died, he left something hidden inside our hut." The stranger's eyes widened. What was it? A map. That night, the two men entered Kojo's hut and found the old map hidden beneath a loose floor stone. The map showed a secret path leading directly to the shrine. More importantly, it marked several hidden caves nearby. The next morning, the stranger, Kojo, and a few brave villagers followed the map into the forest. After hours of searching, they found one of the caves. Inside, they discovered something shocking. The cave was filled with grain. Thousands of bags of grain. There were also goats, sheep, and valuable goods taken from villagers over many years. The people stared in disbelief. "This is our food," one woman cried. "These are animals," another shouted. But the biggest discovery was still waiting. At the back of the cave stood several wooden boxes. When they opened them, they found old records written by previous village leaders. The records revealed the truth. Many years ago, the village had suffered a drought. A greedy leader had made a secret pact at the shrine. The spirit promised wealth and power. In return, the leader agreed to keep the villagers poor and dependent so that fear would never threaten his rule. Each chief after him had continued the pact. Chief Kondo was the latest. The missing grain, the heavy taxes, the stolen livestock, the growing poverty. It had all been planned. While the villagers suffered, the chief secretly stored their wealth and used fear to remain powerful. Suddenly, everything made sense. The hungry children, the frightened elders, the chief's growing riches, the secret trips into the forest. Word spread through Akoma like wildfire. By sunset, the entire village had gathered outside the chief's compound. People who once feared him now demanded answers. The crowd grew larger and angrier. "You lied to us. You stole from us. You made our children suffer. For the first time in many years, Chief Kondo looked afraid. The villagers had finally learned the truth. And now they wanted justice. As the crowd moved toward the chief's gates, one question remained in everyone's mind. What punishment awaits the chief? The next morning, the village was full of noise and movement like never before. People gathered at the center square, speaking with anger and courage in their voices. The truth about the chief had spread across every home. No one could believe how long he had hidden his evil secret and kept the village poor for his own gain. The elders called for action. For the first time in many years, the chief had no control over the people. The guards who once obeyed him now stood still, unsure of what to do. Slowly, they dropped their weapons and joined the crowd. The chief tried to speak, but no one listened. His power had finally come to an end. By evening, the chief was removed from his position. His house was searched, and all the stolen wealth he had taken from the village was recovered. Gold, food supplies, and hidden treasures were brought out and shared fairly among the people. Everything that once belonged to the village was returned. The elders and the people came together to choose a new leader. They picked a man who had always spoken for truth and fairness. He was not rich or powerful, but he was wise and kind. For the first time in years, the village felt hope again. That night, something strange happened. The dark feeling that had covered the land for so long began to fade. The air became lighter. The soil, which had been dry and weak, slowly became rich again. It was as if a heavy curse had finally been broken. Within days, green shoots began to rise from the ground. The crops returned faster than anyone expected. Fields that had once been empty now turned bright and full. The people smiled as they worked together to rebuild their farms and their lives. Families who had suffered for years began to recover. Children laughed again. Homes were repaired. Food was shared freely. The village that once lived in fear now lived in peace and unity. At the edge of the village, the stranger who had revealed the truth stood quietly. He watched everything change with calm eyes. No one knew where he came from or why he chose to help them. Before the sun rose the next day, the stranger began to walk away. He did not ask for thanks or reward. He simply left, disappearing into the morning mist, as quietly as he had come. As the sun rose fully over the village, peace had already settled in like a soft blanket. The people moved through the streets with joy in their hearts, still amazed by the changes that had taken place. Everywhere they went, they spoke about the stranger who had uncovered the truth that had been buried for so long. The villagers gathered once more in the center square. This time, there was no fear, only gratitude. They called out for the stranger, hoping he would return so they could thank him properly. They spoke about how their lives had been saved from darkness and how the truth had finally set them free. But the stranger was already gone. Even so, the people did not forget him. They said his courage had brought back their future. Without him, they would still be living under lies and suffering in silence. His name was spoken with respect in every home, even though no one truly knew who he was or where he had come from. With the new leader guiding them, the village continued to grow stronger. Farms became full again, trade returned, and families who once struggled began to live in comfort. The people worked together with trust, and slowly the village became one of the most peaceful places in the land. Happiness returned in ways many thought were lost forever. As time passed, the story of what happened was told to every child who grew up in the village. It was told not just as a story of a corrupt chief, but as a lesson about truth and justice. The storyteller would always end it with a calm voice, reminding everyone of what they had learned. Greed can hide behind power for many years, he would say, but truth never stays buried forever. No matter how strong a lie may seem, it will one day come into the light. Then he would pause before speaking the final lesson, so that no one would forget it. A leader who enriches himself while his people suffer may hide the truth for a season, but sooner or later, the truth will expose him before the entire world. And with those words, the story always ended, leaving every listener thinking deeply about power, honesty, and the price of hidden secrets. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to follow for more historical stories like this.